So what's worse, a love scene with Al Pacino or a love scene with with fucking Bill Murray? Look at those big hairy arms. That gold chain banging against your forehead.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat The Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you even remember what Blockbuster Video was? If you answered yes and this is the podcast for you, I'm one of your three co-hosts, Roger Roper, and alongside me are my two co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And Gene, Ned Ryerson Lyons.
I told you, call me Bronco.
And each week, we take a look back and decide if our favorite films still hold up. Each week, typically, the audience selects from 6 movie choices that we then break out a race car VHS tape rewinder and watch the movie that tallied the highest number of votes. Other times, people pay us to do a movie. At the end of each podcast, however, the three of us will still provide you, the audience, with a number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. You can find us everywhere, including iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, TuneIn, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever fine podcasts are found. And check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review television series such as American Gods, Westworld, Game of Thrones, and Taboo. Game of Thrones coming back April 19. So if you find yourself with a long weekend, start rewatching now. That being said, Big D, what movie have we been paid to review today?
Yeah, so we were commissioned by Greg to review one of my favorite movies, Groundhog Day. And Greg wrote, I discovered the movie on basic cable at some point in the late 90s. Groundhog Day was always playing on some channel, and it had a paralyzing effect. I joined the movie at whatever point in the story it was and finished it. The movie was always my afternoon eater, and I think the reason for this was the character and the town was charming. The reason for the time loops is left ambiguous, something for us to think about. I had this great 1984 Cadillac Eldorado. What?
Just your daughter keeps coming back on the screen.
Okay. Yeah, she's dressed as Rapunzel. It's her birthday. She can do it. So the time loop is left ambiguous, somewhat for us to think about. And because I had a great 1984 Cadillac Eldorado when I was in high school, and a similar model of Eldo can be seen in moments before Ned's appearance, this movie had a place in my heart. Love the podcast. Great work. Keep it up. And be glad I didn't commission the other movie I had in mind, Best Greg. Greg, it doesn't work that way. You can commission, like I said, Prince of Tides, and we're not doing it. I know you don't threaten us with a bad commission, but thank you very much for this. Greg also submitted a theory in here that we'll include in one of the bullets, but it's interesting. It's about the origin of Ned Ryerson and what he means. But thank you very much for supporting the podcast, Greg. This one was a pleasure.
Yeah, Greg, as testament to how much Big D was excited about doing this particular movie, we had decided to run Planes, Trains, and Automobiles as an encore presentation so we could take the week of Thanksgiving off. And then the day before Thanksgiving, he's like, you know what? Why don't we record Groundhog Day too? Let's not let it sit a week. He really, really wanted to do this movie.
So sometimes I feel like recording the podcast is my own version of Groundhog Day. I'm like, didn't we just fucking record a podcast yesterday? We got to do another one. How many weeks in advance do we want to record?
We recorded on Saturday. We didn't. We're one day ahead of schedule, and you guys are making it seem like I'm cracking the whip.
Yeah. Hey, listen, Greg. Thank you so much for sending in. I do believe sometime like we're getting a lot of requests for commissions, and the commission process is this: you go on our website, you go to shatthemovies.com. There is a link that you can donate to the podcast. I think our set rate is $100 or more. Some people, we understand, want a commission, but they don't have the funds, and that's totally cool. Whatever you can to support the podcast. But there are some people who are like, hey, I have $30, I have $40. What do you think of the idea of crowdsourcing? Like, Is there a way for us to like set like a GoFundMe or something like that if people really want to do something?
Yeah, I've actually been doing a little investigating of that and running some ideas across our friend Dana Buckler over at How Is This Movie podcast, because he is the expert at Patreon and he's been at the game a lot longer. So that is something we have in the works that would allow multiple people to contribute towards a commission. but at least contact us first with an email, because you could say, I want to give you, I'm trying to think of a movie we wouldn't do.
No. Listen, if someone pays me, I will whore myself out to watch that movie.
Okay.
I've watched worse movies.
That'll be a solo podcast. So if you want to do that, just commission it, and it'll be a solo Roger podcast.
I think a lot like Larry, you're going to get a 25-cent bid on that one.
Well, Groundhog Day is a 1993 American comedy fantasy film directed by Harold Ramis and written by Ramis and Danny Rubin. It stars Bill Murray as Phil Connors, a TV weatherman who is caught in a endless time loop. Andie MacDowell and Chris Elliott also co-star. Groundhog Day was a modest success on release and garnered generally positive reviews. However, it later attracted critical acclaim and is often included in the list of best comedy films ever. A recent stage musical adaptation premiered in 2016, and the term Groundhog Day is now used to describe a recurring situation in both government and military arenas. Guys, this is the Xerox of movies. No longer do we associate Groundhog's Day with the actual happenings that occur on February 2nd. It's now you're being stuck in a never-ending day of hell.
Yeah, the movie overtook the actual holiday that it's supposed to represent and take place in. So yeah, it's amazing it's done that.
Yeah, but I feel like any other holiday that they try to tell this movie on, it wouldn't be the same. You know, like, could you imagine if this was like Veterans Day or like Arbor Day, Martin Luther King birthday?
You literally picked like the three biggest downers of holidays. Why don't you go with Earth Day and Columbus Day as well? It could work if it was like the 4th of July or Thanksgiving. I think it could work.
Definitely.
Thanksgiving would be a great premise for this movie. Groundhog Day 2.
Mm-hmm. We always ask the question, where were you? What are your memories of this film the first time you saw it? We'll start with you, Gene.
So I got to admit, and King B yelled at me earlier today for even admitting this, but I'd actually never seen the entire movie prior to watching it for this podcast. And it's kind of the opposite, actually, of what Greg mentioned, is that every time I picked it up, I was like, man, I don't even know what part of the movie I'm in because it's always looping. And I was like, man, I'm not at the beginning. I'm kind of halfway through it. And I just thought, nah, and just walked away from it. So this was actually my first time watching it.
Big D, how about yourself?
I did not see this in the theater because the commercials don't do it justice and you don't really know what you're in for until you watch it. Once it came out on video, I think I was back at Blockbuster working on one of the breaks from college. So I remember renting it, loving it instantly. And I actually talked the manager into taking one of the store copies and converting it to previously viewed so I could get it at a discount. And I remember just buying it, taking it home. And much like Phil, I probably relived this tape. I probably wore this thing out. I'm going home tomorrow to New York for Thanksgiving. I have to look and see if my parents still have my VHS collection because I would love to check this movie out on my original copy.
Yeah, it's strange because this is the epitome of a blockbuster movie. This was right around the time that Blockbuster and Hollywood Video, I think, were at their peak, right? Mm-hmm. Blockbuster, the Wayne Huizenga was buying the Dolphins. He was buying the Marlins. He brought like a baseball franchise to Florida. Blockbuster was everywhere. And this is the first time that really movies could garner a following after they had been in the theater. Like Groundhog Day was also that for me. I have seen this movie multiple times in its entirety, but the first time I ever remember this movie, or it's back in my zip file, was on my first date ever in 1993 at the South Chase Cinemas in Southwest Orlando. Big D, it's that Dollar Theater now that's right down the street. I went and saw Father of the Bride, and I mean, I don't want to get called out on my dick here on Twitter, but we really just went there the entire time to make out in the back of the theater. Nasa Martinez, 7th grade. She was amazing. I'm going to out her, whatever. She doesn't listen to the podcast, but like we were making out so much, and I'm not kidding you. They called in an usher to stop us. Anyway, the point is we were leaving the theater and I saw a poster of Groundhog Day. And I remember thinking to myself, that's a dumb adult movie I'll never watch. It's probably pretty horrible. It's got Bill Murray in it. How good could it be? But fast forward, it came out on videotape later that summer. I watched it with my dad and my first stepmom, and we loved it. I couldn't believe how good it was and how dumb I was for doubting the brilliance of this movie. And since that time, it's been a staple as one of the best movies I've ever seen. And every time it is on, I find myself watching it no matter where it is in the movie. And I fucking love it. Thank you, Greg. With that being said, Big D, play the trailer.
It's Groundhog Day!
Groundhog time.
1,000 people,
freezing their butts off waiting to worship a rat.
Weatherman Phil Connors is spending the day in Puxatawney, Pennsylvania.
Phil? Ned! Ned Ryerson. I did the whistling belly button trick at the high school talent show.
Bing!
Bang!
But Phil's about to find out he's not just stuck in Puxatawney.
Will you be checking out today, Mr. Connors?
Chance of departure today, 100%.
He's stuck
Groundhog Day!
in Groundhog Day.
I'm reliving the same day over and over.
Phil?
Ned Ryerson?
Bang!
Do you ever have deja vu, Mrs. Lancaster?
I don't think so, but I could check with the kitchen.
Well, it's Groundhog Day. Again?
At first, he was a little anxious.
Phil? What?
Will you be checking out today, Mr. Connors?
I'd say the chance of departure is 80%.
But now,
We could do whatever we want.
he's discovering the possibilities
Don't you worry about cholesterol?
Why?
and living life like there's no tomorrow.
Phil Connors!
Ned!
Because there isn't.
I am an immortal. I have been stabbed, shot, burned, frozen, electrocuted. I'm a god.
You're God.
I'm a god. I'm not the god. He's out of his gourd.
But to get what his heart wants most
What are you looking for, Phil? A date for the weekend?
means living this day over again till he gets it right.
Believe it or not, I studied 19th century French poetry.
What a waste of time.
I studied 19th century French poetry.
La fille qui j'aimerais.
You speak French.
Oui.
Bill Murray, Andie MacDowell,
To the groundhog.
I always drink to world peace. Well, what should we drink to?
I like to say a prayer and drink to world peace. Don't drive angry. Don't drive angry. He might be okay.
Life has a funny way of repeating itself.
What did you do today?
Oh, same old, same old.
Weatherman Phil Connors reassures Pittsburgh viewers that an approaching blizzard will miss western Pennsylvania. He goes with news producer Rita Hansen and cameraman Larry to Puxatawney, Pennsylvania to cover the Groundhog Day festivities for the fourth time in a row, and Phil makes no secret of his contempt for the assignment, the small town, and the hicks who live there.
So it doesn't seem like we can go a podcast without talking about goths or vampires or nurses.
Or my dick.
Even this, or Gene's dick. So even in this movie, doing some of the research, Danny Rubin got the original idea for Groundhog's Day after reading Interview with a Vampire. He said, eternal life can be both a blessing and a curse simultaneously. You know, what would it do to someone if they had eternal life and an endless number of days? How would it change them? So that was the origin of this. And I just thought it was kind of cool that no matter what we do, there's always vampires involved.
So do you think at any point there was a part of the movie that Bill Murray's character attacked Rita's throat and tried to suck her blood? Like how much of Harold Ramis's influence do you think you have on this movie?
I just think it's interesting that he makes a lot of assumptions right off the bat after figuring out the day's repeating itself and acts like a vampire in a sense. Like, you don't know you're not going to gain weight. You don't know
Right.
that you're not going to age. Like, there's a lot of shit that can still be happening. There's a lot of suppositions made in this movie. And honestly, knowing that any sort of vampire lore inspired it makes me a little more angry about it. So we'll get to that.
There is 3 days of actual shooting that they did that never made the final movie that I would pay to have this be in some bonus like Blu-ray. He paints the room red. He breaks out a chainsaw. He gives himself a mohawk. He goes crazy on the bed and breakfast. Where was this? I want to see this, Phil Connor.
But at any of the moments that he's doing any of that, can he see his reflection in the mirror?
I don't know.
I just imagine myself going to some sort of a Groundhog Day stock exchange where I could be like, okay, I'll give you 5 minutes of snowball fights. You give me mohawk, painting the room, and some sort of bar fight, and we'll call it a day.
Well, the Harold Ramis, as we know, is Egon from Ghostbusters, and he's obviously done a lot of partnerships with Bill Murray and Harold Ramis, and I almost forgot that this was another pairing of them, because in most of the things they do together, it's absolutely brilliant, and it's a national treasure of American cinema.
Yeah, there's a kind of a sad origin, or there's a sad backstory to this, and I never knew it until watching this and doing some research. Most people know that there was a feud between Murray and Ramis that almost went to Ramis's passing a few years back. But if we go back even to the beginning, from the years of 1979 to 93, Ramis and Murray collaborated on 6 blockbuster movies: Meatballs, Caddyshack, Stripes, Ghostbusters, Ghostbusters 2, and this. Then something happened where they didn't speak for 20 some odd years. And researching, I found out why. On the set here, I guess Murray had a habit of showing up late. He would throw tantrums. He was arguing with Ramis about the direction and the choices that he was making. He wanted it to be more like a moody, provocative, introspective look at the character, whereas Ramis wanted to be a straightforward comedy. And once the movie came out, even though it was spectacular and just loved, the two of them did not speak for 21 years until Ramis's health started to fail. And then finally, Brian Doyle Murray said, "You have to go see him." He went to the hospital. They had some kind of a sit down. Nobody knows what they talked about, what they discussed. Murray put out a nice tweet once he passed and then did a heartfelt eulogy at the Academy Awards. But it's so odd to think what could have happened if, I wouldn't trade Groundhog's Day because whatever happened on set made this miracle of a movie. But 21 years of collaboration that we lost just because the two got into a fight.
Well, think about it. Like, we've talked about this with Ptolemy Slocum on the Westworld podcast when we asked the question, what is it about best friends that get involved in artistic endeavors? There's like this such confluence of creativity juices. And when you're at that high level, when you're Harold Ramis and you're Bill Murray, you have to assume the relationship was so close. When it breaks off, when you no longer can be around that person, it's like a divorce, right? Where you just have to completely separate yourself because you were so intimate with that person to begin with. And unfortunately, that's what happens. And we sometimes wait till it's the very last minute to make amends. And, if there's anything that this can teach us, or anyone who's ever experienced death, is, don't let that happen to you. Don't let your egos get in the way. I mean, we get angry with each other over a stupid little podcast here. And like, we just need to sometimes look at the bigger picture. We saw that it almost is like a John Lennon and Paul McCartney situation here with Murray and Ramis. But you almost have to think like Bill Murray is kind of revered now as kind of like this super cool dude. And you have to wonder how much of Bill Murray is still really like that asshole.
Because Murray's an asshole in most movies. You have Venkman, you have Frank Cross. We've done both those movies. Ernie McCracken in Kingpin. He plays the asshole all the time. And I thought that's what we were in for when this movie started. Another typical asshole movie. But this was such a different Murray performance. It was a pleasure to see it didn't go where I thought it was.
Yeah, and I think I think why Murray also comes across as such an asshole in a lot of his movies. And I think he played shortly after this, Scrooge came out, or maybe Scrooge was right around the same time, which is almost the same character that almost learns a similar lesson. Is that Murray is sweaty all the time. Is it, it's so weird that he's a leading man and he just constantly looks like he shouldn't be running a 5K.
It's one of the problems that I really have with Bill Murray in a lot of the movies. I feel like he's constantly miscast when they have him as this leading man. Like any romantic scene with him, I get kind of sick to my stomach. And it's not like if he played sort of a self-deprecating comedy, or where other people in the movie were just kind of like treating him like he was not an attractive man, but he is like patently unattractive.
Yes. That's what I don't get about like Ghostbusters. Like, how does he score Sigourney Weaver? He's such a weird,
it's a movie
looking guy. Yeah.
I get uncomfortable watching him kiss. I can only imagine what poor Andie MacDowell had to go through.
So what's worse, a love scene with Al Pacino or a love scene with fucking Bill Murray? Look at those big hairy arms. That gold chain banging against your forehead.
Bill Murray's just unattractive, but I don't think he finds himself attractive. Watching Al Pacino, he's like, yeah. Oh, people are gonna love this. So I always got to go against Pacino.
Yeah, and I think the nice thing about Bill Murray is he never makes us watch the actual sex scene.
Yeah.
He's just hitting on people. He's not fucking people.
Yeah, he's never taken a shirt off during a lovemaking scene. He's always gone like full Mormon. He leaves the clothes on. But like we've talked about like how unattractive we think Bill Murray is, but is Rita really that attractive? Like Andie MacDowell is somehow supposed to be like at this time she's a leading actress. She's I guess she was a model, but like outside of her giant teeth, big curly hair, and weirdly Southern accent, is Andie MacDowell attractive?
Yeah, Raj, if she walked into a room and you were there, you would fucking faint. Like, that is a beautiful woman. You're only looking at her from that prism of she's wearing 1980s fashion. It's the same thing that happened with Jurassic Park, man. Like, you got to look at it in the context. You take Andie MacDowell, she's beautiful. She's got a great smile. She's got amazing eyes, that big curly hair, like you mentioned. And that's a beautiful woman. And I think that she was really a good fit for being a news producer, but also this romantic interest. I thought she was really well cast.
Yeah, and I'm going to need the audience's help in this. I can remember that she did a cover, like a fashion magazine, with the body paint. Something like Demi Moore did, where she had the three-piece suit painted on. I swear Andie MacDowell did something like that, but she looked good. If you take her out of this, you said she's dressed like a Mormon. If you dressed her up or you saw some of her photo shoot, she looked good.
Yeah, but okay. So are you saying, Gene, that if Andie MacDowell walked in wearing a pink cardigan or a vest out of a 1980s comedian's wardrobe and ordered a sweet vermouth on the rocks with a twist, you'd still be attracted to her?
Mm-hmm.
I think that, I think that, like she said about her perfect man, a man who is humble enough to know he's not perfect. That's me. I look at her and I go, you know what? Look, no. If I looked at Andie MacDowell and I look at myself, no matter what she's wearing,
you humble.
Listen, if I look at Andie MacDowell, no matter what she's wearing, I look at myself, I go, that woman is out of my league. So absolutely.
Okay. Out of the three of us, who do you think looks at themselves in the mirror the most on average each day?
You.
You're crazy. You're absolutely crazy.
I can see you every day in front of the mirror just practicing your pod monologue. All right, what am I gonna hit him with this time?
No, he's like that SNL character, the one who's like, people love you. You're
Stuart Smalley.
Stuart Smalley. He's like, you're just a wonderful guy. You're the best on the podcast. And gosh darn it, you're wonderful.
If science has taught us anything, it's that self-affirmation really does help with your mental well-being. But like we talked about Andie MacDowell, we've talked about Bill Murray. I think the real gem in this movie, and I almost completely forgot he's in it because I have seen this movie so many times, is Chris Elliott, who's a goddamn national treasure.
Watch your mouth.
I completely agree with you, Raj. The supporting cast in this movie is fantastic. You've got Andie MacDowell, as you mentioned. Chris Elliott, one of the most underappreciated comedic talents of the 90s. He was amazing in Get a Life. He had his own TV show, man. People forget that on Fox. And then also in Cabin Boy. Like, if I would have known that he was in this movie, I would have watched it a long time ago.
Yeah, not only was he in Cabin Boy, which again, if you haven't watched Cabin Boy, stop what you're doing and download it immediately. Also, Andy Richter in Cabin Boy, fucking fantastic, a young Andy Richter. But like, if you even go deeper into Chris Elliott, old school David Letterman, I grew up summers with Dad. I could stay up as late as I wanted, and I would watch nothing but David Letterman. I would skip Johnny Carson and just go straight to Letterman. Chris Elliott was a writer and a recurring character on that show. It was groundbreaking, some of the characters that he did and all of his appearances since, every time he would come back and do it. But also Get a Life, I think, is released on Blu-ray or in DVD. Gene, I think you can get that, right?
I'm pretty sure. I would like to go back and watch it again because I remember as a kid, like this was right when my sense of humor was kind of transitioning into adulthood. And just, he was like nothing I'd seen on TV before. He was absolutely classic. Also from that era, somebody else who starred in this movie was the fat guy from Herman's Head.
That's right. Herman's Head, another brilliant show that I think was way too ahead of its time. And for those young millennials who don't know what Get a Life is or don't remember, it's a song that had REM Stand as its opening theme song.
You guys lost me about 5 minutes ago. I don't know any of this you're talking about.
I think you were in the army or something possibly, at that time. Yeah. You weren't allowed to watch Fox comedies.
Herman's Head. I'm like, what the fuck is Herman's Head?
I don't think they had satellite television to send it over to Korea where you were based.
Yeah, Big D, if you don't remember Herman's Head, really revolutionary show concept. It would be a normal sitcom, and then they would cut to inside Herman's head, and all the characters were talking. It's kind of like Raj. What's that movie you love with the
Inside Out or the Disney one?
Yeah,
it's not Inside Out,
or
is it?
Being John Malkovich?
Is that
Inside Out?
Is it Inside Out?
Yeah, Inside Out, right? Yeah, I think it's
all I can think of is Up because I dressed up as that character for Halloween.
Anyway,
it's the Disney movie with all the different emotions. Anyway, listen, we are totally going to fluff this movie the entire podcast. I do want to point out my only flaw with it, and it happens early in the movie. It's that classic 90s movie trope where the opening song relates directly to the plot of the story. I think the song is just like your Weathermen. Like, do you think they hire people to write these songs? Because it's that shitty 90s adult soft rock music you'd hear in between Jimmy Buffett songs at Margaritaville. That's how bad this song is.
So you have a problem? You don't think there's just randomly a song called the Pennsylvania Polka?
No.
Yes?
That's obviously a classic. I mean, it's the Pennsylvania Polka.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, so it's about the movie. Who cares? It works.
Well, the next day, Phil awakens at the Puxatawny bed and breakfast to Shunny and Cher's I Got You, Babe on the clock radio. He tapes a half-hearted report on Puxatawny Phil and the town's festivities. Rita wants to stay and cover other events, but Phil wants to return to Pittsburgh. However, the blizzard blankets the region and snow, stranding them in Puxatawny. Phil shuns the celebrations and retires to bed early.
Phil is all about a bed and breakfast. I have no clue why. I hate bed and breakfast. I think they're dirty. It's like I'm staying at an aunt's house or like some relative I don't really know. The food is made in somebody's kitchen. I don't like it. I would rather stay in a nice chain hotel.
Yeah, when I was younger, I thought it was ridiculous that people stayed in hotels. I'm like, why don't you just stay at a friend's house? Now, as an adult, I do not want to stay at anybody's house. Even if I'm flying to a city where I know somebody is, the hotel or the Airbnb is the way to go.
Yeah, it's weird because I'm okay with an Airbnb, but as long as I have the entire space.
Yeah.
I don't want to do an Airbnb where I share a room or a couch.
No, but like a bed and breakfast, the person's there. I don't.
That's what I mean.
It's creepy. Plus, it's dirty.
Yeah, so Carrie Gross and I recently went to LA for the Cloak and Dagger Music Festival, and we got there and she had rented a room. She was like, look, the first time we went to LA, she rented a room in a house and the people were there. And I was like, please, let's not ever do that again. Like, I like to have my own place. I'll pay extra for it. It's just weird. So the second time we went, she's like, the room is upstairs. It's got its own kitchen, its own bathroom, and its own entrance. The people who live there are downstairs. It's separate. I was like, all right, cool. So then we get there and the guy's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I overbooked. I booked that room, but you can have a downstairs room. So I go in this downstairs room and there's like an old person's stool in the shower and like floral bedding. And then I noticed over there's like a therapeutic bed with like one of those remote controls on the side of it. And I was like, I'm staying in grandma's room. Like that's where I'm staying. I couldn't handle it. Didn't even have its own lock on the door.
No, that used to be grandma's room.
I was going to say grandma recently passed away. That's why that room just became available.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But like, does anyone know why we even still have Groundhog Day? Like, is this a pagan holiday? What's going on here?
I don't get it. I mean, now I understand the whole origin of it. If Phil comes out, it's a sunny day and he sees his shadow, that means winter will last 6 weeks more. If the groundhog doesn't see his shadow, then spring will arrive early. But this is like a Santa thing. It's fucking stupid. Who would like take a day off and go out there to see this, like he says, this giant squirrel predict the weather when you know it's not real? It's like reading the Farmer's Almanac. Why are you wasting your time? Why are we still doing this?
I have one theory, and it's from working in newspapers for, 13 years, is February is very, very slow for news. Like nothing is happening in February, right? There's no election. There's no like outdoor stuff going on. There's really no good sports on at the time. There's just nothing happening in February, right? So this is like something that cover. Like you can devote a whole front page to it, and the build up to it. And I think this movie speaks to it. He's like, why the fuck are we out here? It's like, well, what else are you going to cover? There's nothing going on.
Yeah. So like, because I always thought in small towns, it was the adverse effect. I thought that when it was snowy and cold and there was nothing else to do, like people would just go crazy, stir crazy, and start doing evil things in the small towns. Unlike Florida, where they just do bath salts year round.
Yeah, I mean, I've lived in a lot of small towns, again, as a result of being in newspapers. So I lived in like Marysville, California, and Lima, Ohio. And one of the funny things about it is when you watch movies like Groundhog Day, you think that these small towns like Puxatawny are going to be very folksy. You're going to have all those little shops open in the main strip. There's the little diner and everyone's kind of friendly. And the city slickers look down on them as like being hicks or being simple or being too positive. And I wish that were the case. I would like small towns if that was the case. But that's not what it is. Like, what they don't show is how awful the people are, how backward they are, how high the crime rates are. When I lived in Lima, it had a 30% vacancy rate on residences, meaning only 2 out of 3 houses had people in them. So you imagine just like what's going on there. And so I think in 1993, maybe that Phil's disdain wasn't warranted. But small towns today in that Rust Belt, they're fucking, I mean, look at Ohio, look at Ohio's voting record. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, I mean, Ormond Beach, Daytona is kind of trying to recover a little bit from that same small town feel. It's nice to be back in a big city with like a big airport and solid infrastructure that's still growing and expanding. But like, do you think that Phil, the character of Phil, do you think he's annoyed by just being in this hick town because he goes from the big city of Pittsburgh to Puxatawny? Or do you think that he's just annoyed being a meteorologist in general? Like, when it comes to small talk, how annoying do you think it is to be an actual meteorologist? Like, they display that a little bit in the movie when the bed and breakfast owner is like, oh, like, well, do you think it's going to blizzard today? And like, he goes into this whole spiel. Like, obviously meteorologist is a real thing. It is a real science. And yes, some do become on-air talent. Now, at least it was in the old days. I think now it's more people with communications degrees and that are pretty do the news. But like, how annoying must it be if you really know the weather and someone asks you, what do you think's going to happen today?
So from my experience, knowing a lot of people who do TV news, one of my friends, actually one of our listeners, Andrew Michael, he's on WSYX in Columbus. And meteorologists are the nicest people at the TV station. Like, they are the people who actually go out and talk to you. They love being in the small towns. They love doing these dorky things. It's like the anchors that you got to worry about and the sports guys. The sports guys are the biggest assholes you do not want to shoot the shit with.
No, you say they love shooting the shit. Living in Florida, I can see the pure joy that meteorologists get when a hurricane starts getting formed. And you actually have it start to get like, they're like category 3, woo, category 4. You can see the joy in their eyes because they know that they're going from the back burner. The guy in sports, fuck you, hurricanes here. We're leading with the weather, and they love it. No matter how bad the destruction is, for that few weeks, they are the big dog on the air.
But like, we haven't talked about the best character in this movie, the guy who absolutely nails it. Gene, you talked about the supporting cast. Can we talk about Ned Ryerson? Holy shit, best character ever, right?
Wrong. That guy is crazy. So irritating. And there's I think what you like about him, there's a little Roger Roper in there. And I think that's
little.
Am I right or am I right or am I right? Right. That is such a Roger move. I was just like, oh my God.
Roger, this is 100%, 75% you.
You're ridiculous. The actor, I forget. I'm sorry, I didn't get the actor's name, but he nails the character.
Stephen Tobolowsky.
Stephen Tobolowsky. They should have given this guy some sort of award because he goes with it. Like, it's a tough character to pull off, be charming, and yet be still comedic. I think his performance is highly underrated. He's definitely a highlight of the movie. And we talked about like how Bill Murray was stuck in between how he wanted to play this, but it's the little things that he does in his performance. His countdown, did you catch this? There's just little things that you catch now. Going back, when he's doing the countdown from 3, 2, 1, just very subtly, he flicks off the camera with his middle finger. It feels so unforced and just perfect.
I totally agree. You know why you love the character of Ned Ryerson?
Why is that?
He was captain of the guard in Spaceballs. So I think subconsciously you just see him and he just fills your heart with warmth.
That may be true. Well, Phil wakes to I Got You, Babe, and the same announcement from the radio and discovers the day events repeating exactly. Phil relives the day and returns to the bed, assuming it was a dream, but it is still Groundhog Day. When he wakes, he is trapped in a time loop that no one else is aware of. Realizing there are no consequences for his actions, he spins the first several loops, indulging in binge drinking, one-night stands, and reckless driving. He becomes depressed, however, and commits suicide several times, but yet does still not escape the loop.
Okay, so now we're getting to the good stuff. Now, like you said, it is within the first 2 loops that he decides, I'm going to pull the old Nancy Taylor trick. The, hey, where did you go to high school? What teacher did you have? I got to ask, is that morally wrong what Phil does? Okay, because he gets much darker as we go on here. Do you think him manipulating Nancy to have sex with him? Are we into an area that you're uncomfortable with?
I mean, aside from it being implausible, just because you might have gone to school with somebody or knows something about them doesn't mean they're going to fuck you in the same day. But beyond that, yeah, it's absolutely morally wrong. He's being predatory. He's taking an advantage he has in knowledge, and it's like taking stalking to a much, much darker place.
Okay, so I don't think, first off, that she sleeps with him because they had a connection. It's because he's a big-time, Pittsburgh weatherman. He's a celebrity. That's why Nancy sleeps with him. But
no, she doesn't know who he is. She doesn't recognize him.
But then he does. He says, hey, I got to go do a report here. He said, just let's meet up afterwards.
But that's after he has the opening. That's after he.
It doesn't matter. He got in. He negged her. He got the opening.
Right. Well, he doesn't neg her.
Well, he did some parlor trick, right? He did the trick. He said, I know we went to high school, we were in class, but if he's willing, to push the line, like Gene said,
how is that pushing the line?
Well, he tricked her into having sex. So,
okay, he didn't trick. He used a method. Let me ask you this. When you were dating, Gene, you know this, you're a single guy. You're out in the prowl. There's a certain, what's your method? Everyone has a method for meeting people. I'm not saying it's a manipulation, but you certainly do things to entice other people when you're first trying to get to know them, right? What's your opening method?
So my entire shroud of humility is about to get pulled back because, guys, I say this with 100% honesty. I do nothing. That's my thing.
That's your method.
That's my method. Is I just don't do anything.
You ignore. You just ignore.
I certainly don't prowl.
No.
You come off as aloof. You come off as you let them come to you. You draw them into the mystery that is behind your dark hair and your dark beard, and you're like, oh, I'm so angst and goth, and hopefully they'll want to come, at me.
No,
that's your fucking method. And there's no difference in what this guy is doing.
Raj, I'll delve back many years into my single days. What Gene is saying is something that I felt worked the best. If you're trying to go meet someone at a hookup, you're going to fail. If you go out to have a good time, other people see you having a good time, and that's attractive. If you come up with a shtick, you're starting off on the wrong foot.
That's the whole point of the movie, is you can't trick people into love. You can't trick people.
Yes.
You can't use methods. You have to truly be your honest, true reflection of yourself, and that's how you're going to find a real connection. We'll get to the meaning behind this movie, but I don't think that he's not crossing the line. He's not being predatory. He's doing what any person in a situation like this would do, which is, when you're first developing your powers for the first time, it's just like Spider-Man. At first you use it to make money by wrestling, and then your grandfather gets shot, and then you realize that with great power comes great responsibility.
Your uncle.
No, but he's misrepresenting himself. He's lying essentially. He is absolutely.
Hold on. I'm gonna come down off my little. I'm gonna actually get up on my soapbox. If you go home with a girl and she has a push-up bra, hair extension, colored contacts, she's wearing 8-inch heels, that is the same type of deception. She's making herself look in a way that she's not. He's playing. I'm not saying you should go out and lie about you, but people lie about their profession. People lie about their situation. Phil is just doing an extension of that game.
Okay, so let's take it a step further. What if he was a mind reader and he was using her thoughts to get in her pants? Is that too far?
That's what Professor X does in college in the X-Men, in the young X-Men movies.
Before he gets paralyzed. Yeah.
Right. Before he gets paralyzed. He's reading the minds of young co-eds at Oxford University.
All right. I want to add an additional dimension to it then. I think Phil's character is plainly spelled out in his interactions with Rita. He wants to get in her pants that day because he knows it's going to be his only chance, and he keeps pushing and he keeps pushing and he keeps pushing. And I'm sorry, but she says no several times, and he is not hearing her lack of consent.
So we didn't see a loop with a chainsaw and a mohawk. Is it outside of Phil's character in the beginning to believe that he would force himself on Rita?
No, it is completely out of his character. We see him multiple times, and this is where I got to push back on both of you, multiple times where he gets slapped, turned down, and he does try to,
get a little handsy,
push the envelope because he's working against time. But every time it gets to a point to where she slaps him, he gives up. He doesn't do anything completely wrong. He doesn't go out and murder people.
All right, homework assignment for everybody. I want you to go check out Caitlin Prest has a podcast miniseries called No. Go check that out and then get back to me about consent, because he's like, What do you mean no? Why not now?
God.
Of course we should. Where are you gonna go? It's bad.
I just can't wait. I can't wait for all the emails and tweets we're gonna get about this. But like, all right, so let's think about it. Let me switch subjects here. Just to show the audience that we're not complete social justice warriors. What would you do if you were presented in a situation where you were in an endless time loop, where you kept reliving the day over and over again without any consequences? What would you do to pass the time?
Okay, well, I'm probably going to lose people liking me after this, but I started texting you, Roger, yesterday. Okay,
It was. I wish I could post the things that you said that you would do.
Well, I don't.
I want the shroud of this facade that you put on. That is Big D, Dick Ebert, on the Shat The Movies podcast. This wise old sage, this gentle giant with a child dressed as Rapunzel in the background. This pillar of morality. The kind of shit that you were saying that you would do.
If you just wait,
I want the audience to know.
If you just wait, I won't mind you sharing, but I'm going to give you the first two things I'm going to do. Number one, I'm going to try to get in a car at 6 a.m. and drive as fast and far away from Puxatawny as I can get. Maybe if I can get a couple thousand miles away, I might break the loop. Number two, I'm fixing that damn pothole in Main Street that he keeps stepping in. I'm definitely going to spend about a month going full Grand Theft Auto. And yes, that includes shooting people, just pulling people out of cars, jumping motorcycles and cars off of buildings, crashing planes. I'm going to push the limits.
Hold on. Let me pull up the exact tweet, because I think there was something around you, like you would go around stabbing people. There was definitely something like that I was like, I don't think I know you anymore. Yeah, it was like, okay, here it is. I'd like to pay the homeless guy to murder someone like Ned. I would like to see how much money it would take to corrupt him. Let's see here. I'd also read the entire Lord of the Rings collection. These are all pretty normal things, right? Yeah, these are normal things. Like a normal,
back to that. I would
sane person thinks about.
Go back to, I would start at the beginning where I said I'd pull Phil out of the box and kill him on camera.
I'm gonna screenshot this. I'd have sex with a few of the old Jeopardy ladies to see if their experience makes them better in bed. Real old ladies. These are things that you wrote to me.
Yeah, don't post those.
But all right.
So what would you two do?
Well, Gene, I'll let you go before I go.
I think I'd finally kill that bear on Red Dead Redemption 2. It'd take me a century or so,
how long
but
it's gonna
I'd
take.
get to him.
That's
God
right.
damn it.
Is that a legendary pelt?
Yeah. He's a toughie that everyone else seems to be able to kill very easily.
I'd like to think that I would use my powers for good. I like to think that I would like learn how to play the drums, play in a jazz band, improve myself. I don't know. I'd probably for the first few days just sit around masturbating a lot. And then, after that, then I'd probably start on a path towards self-improvement. But I don't know.
But I want to throw a caveat here. And this is a question I was going to bring up later, but I'll address it right now. How many loops were there? So in Rubin's original script, Murray is supposed to be looping for 10,000 years. Now, that was the original script.
Yeah.
And the cool thing was, how did he keep track of time? Each day he would read one page in one of the books in the library of the bed and breakfast. So he could keep track of each day's progression, and he would know how many days he had lived. But Ramis then subsequently, a few years back, said he thought it was 10 years. And even somebody went like crazy like I do. They went above and beyond. It's a website called Wolf Nards. So you can find that if you want. But
Wolfman had snards.
They ran the numbers, and they said for Phil to learn all the skills that he did, speaking French, ice sculpting, piano, and then they added up all the iterations that we see or the ones that are talked about. And he said it would take you 8 years, 16 days. So think of all those loops. You would have to come up with things that weren't always, I'm going to kill that bear, I'm going to read a book. You guys would do some fucked up shit too.
Okay, so not counting leap years. Okay, well, there'd be 2 leap years, right? Once every 4 years. So that'd be 2,938 days of the same day.
I can't do the math.
Yeah, that's what it. 365 times 8 plus 2 leap year days. So yeah, on the Judeo-Christian calendar. But like I would be worried because you don't know. Like he starts doing the things like he's jumping off the quarry, he's getting arrested. Both are like risky because you could die or be paralyzed. Like, would you do any of that?
The crazy shit is how quick he gets to that. It's the third day, and he jumps in front of the truck. He gets, he said he jumps off into the quarry. What happens if he gets paralyzed? He jumps off that bell tower. I don't know if that's high enough to always kill you. I would certainly pick a way to kill myself that I knew was going to work.
But you know, it's interesting though, for like, again, as quickly as they get to those things, other things that I completely missed the first 100 times I watched this, the ice sculptures of the groundhogs in increasing absurdity. Like there was like a regular groundhog, and then what appeared to be like a stripper groundhog, and then a 90s cool dad groundhog with the hat turned back, and then some sort of groundhog with a snow globe for a head, or possibly an astronaut groundhog. Like those were some great scenes. And then he's nonchalantly crushing it at Jeopardy with the old people, sipping Jack Daniels. That might be the best scene in the entire movie.
I feel like that would be Cary Gross's ideal night, is just sitting in a room full of old people with a bottle of Jack watching Jeopardy. Like it did have I think that was actually one of my favorite scenes in the movie, just because of the way Bill Murray, I think he was more in his element there, where he was kind of toning it down just a little bit. I thought that was much better than when he's doing the over the top Bill Murray. And that entire scene was just so well shot and paced that I think it's one of the, when people talk about Groundhog Day, they don't really talk about the Jeopardy scene that much. And it was one of the highlights of the movie for me.
Well, Phil tries to explain his situation to Rita, for whom he has feelings, by accurately predicting the day's events. Rita sympathizes, and they spend the entirety of one loop together, but Phil wakes up alone as usual. He decides to use his knowledge of the day's events to better himself and the lives of others, but he learns how to play the piano, sculpt ice, and speak French, but is unable to prevent the death of a homeless man.
So, Roger, you mentioned we start getting now, the editing becomes quick between the iterations of the loops. This could definitely become tedious and annoying because we're seeing things repeating over and over again. But it's a testament to the skill of Ramis and the editing of the editor on the movie. Unfortunately, I didn't look it up. But these repetitive scenes, like when they're in the bar and he's starting to make mental notes of, okay, let's make the toast to world peace. It's sweet vermouth with a twist. Those repeated edits, if you don't do it right, would make this movie unwatchable.
But how much of a savings is that for the studio? Like, I was just thinking about that when I was watching this movie. Like, Back to the Future, Time Cop, Looper, Groundhog Day. Like, you only have to shoot a fraction of the movie. You save a ton of time because they're not shooting them chronologically. They're going to bang those all out, right? Do it this way, do it that way, do it that way. So you're saving money on sets. The actors have to remember fewer lines because they're just repeating themselves scene after scene. I was just thinking about it. I was like, man, from an editing perspective, this must suck. But from a production perspective, from the shooting and the acting, it's great.
But what I think is impressive is there's a nuance to Bill Murray's performance. He isn't just good or bad. Depending where he is in his growth and transition as a character and his redemption, there's subtle changes in his performance that I can't. How do you keep track of that? There would have to be somebody on set to be like, okay, this is the 40th time that you've done this scene. You're not quite good, but you're also not bad. You're somewhere in the middle. Because there's such subtle changes that I think Bill deserves a lot more credit than people give him credit for.
It's almost like the director had a hand in it. Maybe the director was helping make it more funny.
Right, but you were saying... yes, I agree.
Yeah, Ramis is definitely brilliant. Again, it's funny because he keeps finding ways to make what could be a tired plot point interesting and enjoyable. And I think it all culminates in the line that Murray delivers when he says, maybe God isn't omnipotent. He's just been around so long, he just knows everything. It reminds me, though, we're starting to see this around the holidays where certain channels will play like A Christmas Story or National Lampoon's Vacation all the time, kind of background movies around holidays. Do you guys know if they play Groundhog's Day on any day throughout the year over and over again? Like, it seems like the perfect movie that would be on repeat.
Yeah, it seems like the kind of movie you'd want to play on Groundhog Day because there's nothing else going on. So you just put that
right
on. But I think this would be, Raj, I think that would be rating suicide because nobody wants to watch the same commercials over and over again. You'd have to get a really willing sponsor that's willing to spend enough for like millions of dollars that day. I don't know if this movie has the staying power to have an entire, it's not Pee-wee's Big Adventure. No way.
Yeah, okay. Well, all right. I disagree with you there. I love Pee-wee's Big Adventure, but I think this is a better movie than Pee-wee's Big Adventure. And if you think of the brilliance, though, of this movie, like Pee-wee's Big Adventure doesn't take place on any holiday, so it's hard for you to. If I was a TV executive and I said, listen, we're going to have a thing where every Groundhog's Day, we're going to play Groundhog's Day on repeat. It's so meta, and we're going to have the same commercials. Like, part of advertising is what? Being repetitive, getting it in your audience's mind. If you played the same commercial over and over again, of course, that's what I would want.
You keep calling Groundhog's Day a holiday. Nobody's sitting home with their family on Groundhog's Day like, hey, what are we going to watch on TV? Oh, that's called Thanksgiving. Or that's why you have on Christmas, people are sitting around. You could put a Christmas story on and people are there. They'll watch it. Roger, what do you do on February 2nd?
I watch Groundhog's Day.
Bullshit. You're
it's
at
on.
work. Nobody's sitting home
24
watching
hours.
24 hours of TV.
It doesn't matter where it is on Groundhog's Day. I know it'll be on TV and I can jump right in. Oh, there's another Tide commercial. Maybe I'll go out and do some laundry today.
I think one of the interesting things about Groundhog Day is it does have little lessons in it that have nothing to do with time travel or repeating a day or purgatory or anything like that. And one of them is, you're watching Phil and his trick is just paying attention to the woman, like paying attention to Rita or Nancy Taylor, paying attention to what they like, what they dislike, how to talk to them, what their backstory is. And then, using that to come closer to that person. And what's funny about that is you don't need time loops to do that at all. Like most people just don't do it. They're with their girlfriend or their wife or whatever, and they're just not paying attention or caring what it is the fuck they like.
The sensitive Gene Lyons.
Yeah, but I don't necessarily know if it's all about connecting with someone or finding love through time loops. I think it might be a larger morality story at play here. You take a guy like Phil, who's very narcissistic. He's not seeing the outside world. He's not living outside of himself. He doesn't know how his actions impact each other because he's so into himself. And this movie teaches us that you really need to look outside yourself and start helping everyone. This movie's message is so great that 3 different religions have tried to claim it as like their own dogmatic principles, right? There was Buddhism, Judaism, and Christianity that have all tried to lay claim to the overall morality of the narrative.
But what's interesting about that is the thing the movie is lacking, and I watched very closely for it, is an explanation as to why he changes. You're saying he looks outside of himself, but there's a real explanation as to why. He just hits rock bottom out of, I guess, boredom or whatever. It's not like Rita wasn't there the whole time. I just don't see the motivation there.
I think the answer is clear. If he's been there 10 years, repeating the same loop, right? He can't accumulate wealth because the day repeats. If you have a choice at that point, nothing you do, you can't build upon it's okay. You can learn skills. You can read books. You can educate yourself. You can become better. He starts to learn more. He can't accumulate wealth, which is what he's always seemed to be doing. He wants to jump to a bigger market. Here he starts to realize he gets a pleasure out of helping people. And I'm not going to pretend like I'm out, volunteering because I don't. I would like to. But I think he finds a pleasure in helping other people. He doesn't do it to impress Rita anymore. He does it because it makes him feel good inside.
Would you volunteer if you had infinite time?
I think if I saw how I could change people's lives and I had nothing else to do, I'd run out of all my ideas. Yeah, I probably would, because it would be the nicest thing he could do. If you're going to be trapped in jail, you might as well help people.
But what if the results of your volunteerism disappeared every day? Sisyphus.
But it doesn't disappear because it's leaving a constant, permanent mark on who he is. So you could say, yes, there's no physical manifestation of the goodwill he has done, but it's definitely changing him. We see it.
So Big D's theory here is that Groundhog Day is a reverse Dorian Gray. I like it.
Yeah. Well, Greg wrote in with the theory that I don't think we have time. This is only an hour podcast. We're supposed to be an hour podcast, but I think we're going to post it on our website and on Twitter, and you can check that out, right? We can do that.
Yeah. So Greg has an interesting theory here that the character, and again, we're unfortunately we're running against time here because Thanksgiving is tomorrow and we're all traveling. But his theory is that Ned Ryerson is God, that Phil's interactions with Ned Ryerson and the way that Ned warns him and taunts him about watching that first step, that it's a doozy, and parallels to religious texts. Really interesting, and that it all culminates at the end that the only time that Phil gets out of the loop is once Phil purchases life insurance, i.e. he commits his resources to the unknown and uncertainty, and that Phil almost commits himself to God is the time that he breaks out of the loop. And we're going to post all of this on Twitter because I think it's great, and we wouldn't do it justice in this format, but it's an interesting take on Ned Ryerson because he's a key character that we see, and there's a big change to the end to how he accepts him, that he's finally let free from his loops.
So you're saying the character that most resembles your boy Roger Roper is also God? I'll take it.
Yeah.
There is they did interview Harold Ramis on the matter, again, because there have been multiple religious scholars and people that have tried to compare this movie to their messages. Ramis, who was raised Jewish, but says he feels like a Buddhist. He does not practice any organized religion. He says, and he's quoted as saying, although I am wearing meditation beads on my wrist, it's because I'm on a Buddhist diet. They're supposed to remind me not to eat, but actually they just get in the way when I'm cutting steaks. So like, he doesn't really feel like when he wrote the movie and when he's directing the movie that he didn't intend it to be religious in any nature, but he does find it interesting that people are now drawing parallels, or were drawing parallels, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, he is agnostic. He was raised Jewish. His wife is Buddhist.
During one loop, Phil enthusiastically reports the Groundhog Day festivities, amazing Rita. They spend the rest of the day together, with Phil impressing her with his apparent overnight transformation and charitable deeds. She successfully bids for Phil at a charity bachelor auction.
So I've never hidden my somewhat disdain for Bill Murray. So sadly, Bill Murray, more often than not, he's pretty unbearable. But here he's playing Phil Connors, who's unbearable. But Murray is convincing, and those subtle changes, I think he does a great job. For the first time, I felt that this was genuine, like Bill Murray was acting. He was trying on set. He wasn't just showing up. There was a reserved, thoughtful presence in his performance that I haven't seen anywhere else in his career. Yeah, he gets more aloof later on when he becomes the Wes Anderson, muse in every movie. But this is the first time that I felt like Bill Murray actually cared.
Maybe it's the first time he cared, but I would argue this is not a great performance and certainly not his best. I'm a big fan of Bill Murray's kind of later works. The Life Aquatic, I think, is the best movie he ever did. Like, Steve Zissou is the character he was born to play. It encapsulates all the facets of his personality and his acting range. The Royal Tenenbaums, he was fantastic. Rushmore, he was fantastic. And a movie that we covered that I actually loved, which was very similar, as Roger mentioned, was Scrooged. Like, in Scrooged, he was just perfect, and I loved that movie. And again, it was another one of those surreal, holiday lesson learning movies. So there's a lot of parallels there. It was just so much better. And I like Bill Murray's performance in this movie. It's okay, but I still can't stomach that idea of him being miscast as this like slick guy or this hot shot or like the protagonist of the movie. One thing I did like about his performance in this movie, though, that I will give him credit for, is he evolved as a character in the movie, but still stayed Phil. Like, he didn't lose Phil in his entirety.
Yeah, Ramis originally had wanted to cast Tom Hanks as Phil Connors.
Yes.
But the problem they found was that everybody thought of Tom Hanks as that good guy. They kept waiting for the turn. So I don't know anybody else that could embody that. Oh, and I think also Michael Keaton was also up for the role.
Perfect.
No, but nobody better than Bill Murray can really take that transition from asshole, pompous, arrogant weatherman to sensitive Phil Connor. I think he was perfectly cast.
But like, there is a bachelor auction, which is kind of like an old school. I don't think there are allowed to be bachelor auctions anymore. But if there were, out of the three of us, because we know Carrie Gross, if we were to include her, she'd fetch the highest bid. Out of the three of us, which do you think would fetch the highest bid in a bachelor auction?
Big D, without a doubt.
You're full of shit.
You think so?
No, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. There are people who listen to the podcast who can't stand Roger, and there are people who listen to the podcast who can't stand me. But I have yet to hear anybody who's like, oh, that Big D really gets on my nerves. I hate when Big D talks about X. So by process of elimination, you're the most popular. Also, you're a specimen. You're a physical specimen. Roger and I are both average-sized people. You're a giant.
Yeah, I would bid on you just so you could carry me around for a day like Hodor.
Little known fact, Abe Lincoln was sold by his father into indentured servitude to farmers because he was so tall he could pick fruit.
That's factually correct.
Shut up. Is that real?
It's true. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, there was still a indentured servitude back in the day. And then he fought against, guess what?
Slavery.
Indentured servitude.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but
exactly.
no, I think that Gene would go for the most because he would pick out some outfit that accentuated his body. He would definitely spend hours in the mirror getting ready. He'd probably have some routine up there where he would show some talent. I think without a doubt, he would go the highest.
Here's what I would do. I would come the most prepared though. I would have like a PowerPoint presentation.
You would.
On why people should bid for me. And then I'd get 2 pence.
No.
Just like Chris Elliott's characters does. I'd get 25 cents. That's what I would get.
No, you would lay out what the ROI is for buying Roger Roper, how their dollar per hour of enjoyment they would get. I think you would do quite well.
The problem is if you put that on a scale, it'd get into negative pretty quickly. Oh, well, Phil makes an ice sculpture of Rita's face and tells her that no matter what happens, even if he is doomed to continue awakening alone each morning forever, he wants her to know that he is finally happy because he loves her. They retire together to Phil's lodgings, and Phil wakes up to I Got You, Babe again, but finds that Rita is still in bed with him, and he has escaped the time loop forever, and he decides to live it with Rita. End movie.
So in one of the early scripts, the versions, the explanation for the loops was a curse put on Phil by a jilted ex-lover. I am so thankful they did not do that. By leaving it ambiguous and unexplained, it allows the movie to take on this fun, kind of whimsical, magical feel. They weren't breaking a curse. Like, there was no explanation for it because we didn't need it. I like the way they ended it.
Yeah, well, for all the powers, and believe me, I'm in respect for all of Phil's newfound talents, but that ice sculpture did not look like Andie MacDowell at all.
I mean, he was ice sculpting under less than ideal circumstances. Remember, he had a day to do it. And also, like, he was doing it outside with, basically like raw ice and snow. I think he did a pretty decent job. Have you ever tried to ice sculpt a face?
No, but why don't they show us an early loop where he doesn't quite get it right, where it looks kind of heinous? And she's like, what? That's me? I'm out of here. He's like, okay, work on your ice sculpting.
They did show us that. Roger thought it was a groundhog with an astronaut helmet on.
Right. Looks like Sigourney Weaver in Aliens 3 when they can't quite get the xenomorph right. But like, do you think that this is like a storybook ending? Like, do you think that Phil and Rita consummated the relationship before the ending?
Yeah, man, they sanitized the shit out of this ending, and it bothered me a great deal. First of all, you're like, they're both in like their pajamas and doing all the cuddly part, but you don't like, thankfully, unlike Pacino, we didn't have to see the banging going on. But I wanted more friction. I wanted more passion. I wanted something more to happen in this movie and this premise. And what bothered me the most is that all the parts of Phil that I liked disappeared. He became this neutered, boring character.
Oh, wow.
I felt like a child wrote it.
Jeez.
And like, guys, I don't hate feel-good movies inherently. Like I said, I liked Scrooge, but something was just missing in the development of these characters. And one of the things I tried to figure it out, and I sat there just really pondering this. And the best I could come up with is that, when you see Walter White change from where he starts to where he ends in Breaking Bad, it's easy to see someone get darker, and it's believable because that's what happens to us in life. It's very hard for someone to go from dark to light. And I think that this movie is fighting against the entire current of reality, and it makes it hard for me to buy into.
I'm shocked, Gene, that you wanted him to be a bit darker and more real. In the limited time you had, that comes in day 3 and 4 of the relationship. You wanted him to start smacking her on the ass. You wanted some passion. Well, what did you want from this?
No, I just want it to be not, let's live together, or maybe we'll rent. Fence jump, snow play. Like, it's just too much.
Yeah, but when you finally do escape that time loop, do you continue on with your good deeds habits, Gene, or do you backslide into putting back on that relationship 50?
See, I think that he would have backslid during the loop, in the sense that if you're trying to gain someone's love and day after day, you got to start all over again. I think you just fucking give up, right? Which he does at some point when he hits his rock bottom, right? But I think that this is, if the guy has now kept this up and developed this over a decade, I think it's something that's going to stick with him for life.
Yeah, but here's a sequel for Hollywood, or a soft reboot where it's he and Rita's son or daughter. Groundhog Day 2, Phil has fallen back into his same old habits and has to relive it again. Maybe he's a little early on. Maybe, early on we can see him. He's a little skittish, thinking it's going to happen again, like every Groundhog Day. But he doesn't for years. He grows complacent, goes back to his old self, and has to relive it again on another Groundhog Day. And he has to go through the same habits again.
I'm never going to believe I would ever say this, but I'm glad that Harold Ramis is dead. So this will never happen.
They're making another Ghostbusters.
No, I'm not glad he's dead, but I'm saying that this couldn't happen. Yeah. There's no way they're remaking this without him. Murray wouldn't come back. So no, I'm not glad the man is dead, but
that's where you get the soft reboot. It's his son,
glad
played by
not
John Oliver. Who was Andy in The Office?
I don't know. I didn't watch the US version.
Gosh.
If you're out there in Hollywood and you want to contact Roger Roper for the
let's write this movie.
What do they call it for this for Roger Roper's treatment of this movie? Just email him, roger@shatthemovies.com.
Yeah. Now's the time of the podcast where we break out our Shat meters and give you our wipe scores. If you've never listened to the podcast, 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It's like renting an Airbnb all to yourself and not having a shared bathroom and just making a sparkling deposit every time you use it. 5 wipes is the equivalent of using a shared bathroom at a bed and breakfast with 12 other guests, and it's just a mess by the time you get in there. So 0 wipes good, 5 wipes bad. We'll start with you, Dick. How many wipes do you give this movie?
So I'll start off easily. It's a 0 wipe movie for me, really easily. I would give it less than that if I could, if we had a gold star rating. In all the movies we've done, this is easily my top 10. I left the sofa with a smile on my face. It took a while to come off of it, but it's a simple premise, the loops and the redoing the days. But in reality, it's something that most of us lived through. We lived through Groundhog Day. Every day we get up, it's the same. You see generally the same people. You have the same conversations. You're in the same town. You eat the same food. But yet Murray and MacDowell, and a fantastic directing job from Harold Ramis, turned Groundhog's Day from something that was ordinary, like the premise, into something that's truly special. We're now 25 years later, and this movie still holds up. It is something that is truly special. And I want to go back and I think we've been referencing this professional critic quite a bit lately, but there's a critic named Roger Ebert. And he wrote,
I have no idea who that is.
He wrote a great movie essay, and Roger Ebert put it the best way. Groundhog's Day is a film that finds its notes and purpose so precisely that its genius may not be immediately noticed. It unfolds so inevitably, is so entertaining, so apparently effortless, that you need to stand back, slap yourself before you see how good it really is. This is a perfect movie, 0 wipe. It could not be better. And for me, it's at least top 10 in what we've done.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Big D. Outside of the song Weatherman, this movie is timeless in its narrative and execution. It is truly an American classic. It's flawless, and I cannot recommend it enough. I believe there was a 25th anniversary Blu-ray that was released this year. It may have those deleted scenes on there, Big D. If people are still buying Blu-rays, I don't know if they are or not, but go out and pick it up. I think it's released in 4K too. So if you really want to see what Hollywood actors before you were forced to have really white teeth, what that looked like, then go get this movie out on Blu-ray. But for me, I agree. It's a 0 wipe movie. That leaves you, Gene. How many wipes do you give this movie?
First of all, I want to start off with an actually, and I wanted to wait intentionally to the end of the podcast to bring it up. It is Groundhog Day. There's no apostrophe. There's no S. Groundhog Day. 2 words.
What kind of babbling bullshit is this?
So clearly I was the one paying attention to this movie, and therefore my score is the accurate one. Guys, I found myself slightly less bored watching this as an adult as I did when I was a kid. Bill Murray's shtick got old really fast. I was about done with this movie in the first half hour, but I stuck through it for the audience. There was way too much Peter Venkman in there, which I'm on the record as saying in Ghostbusters I could not stand. The romance was oversimplified. I hated this movie's take on romance and love. And frankly, it just didn't get weird enough for me. You have this great weird premise, and the movie stayed fairly within the confines of just normal life. I think that there were a couple suicide attempts and getting, wasted at bowling and driving down the railroad tracks. Which, by the way, what happened to the cop? Did he get hit by the train? Like,
no, he veered off before when he saw the train.
Whew. But this movie falls in that same category as Christmas Vacation and Home Alone. And maybe it's just because I didn't grow up white. I don't know. But this movie to me was too folksy, too cutesy, too basic. It's not a bad movie by any means. In fact, I'd say it's a better than average movie, but a perfect movie by no means. This is a 2-wiper for me.
Ugh.
Oh, bah humbug.
That's sacrilege. Yeah, jeez.
Boo.
You're the Scrooge. You realize you are Bill Murray of this podcast.
Shame. I wish I had
Sure,
the bell.
but
Shame.
I want to point out though that when I say I don't care for a movie, I still acknowledge its merits and I go 2 wipes. Roger will be like, I didn't like that guy's face. 5 wipes. Or famously added or took off half a wipe because Joey Lawrence was in it.
True. Very
Yeah,
true.
you've done that.
Joey Lawrence was in a movie?
No, not in this.
No.
You took half a wipe off a movie because Joey Lawrence was in it.
I don't remember what movie
Yes.
Joey Lawrence was in.
You did.
Did I?
Yeah, I remember. I couldn't tell you what it was, but you did.
Whatever. All right. Well, if we add up 0, 0, and 2 and divide by 3, that gives us how many wipes, Gene?
That is 0.666 wipes on the Shat scale.
Which makes a lot of sense because this movie is like purgatory. And Big D, if you have Satan's number, where does that put it on the pantheon of Shat?
So as much as I don't agree with Gene's 2-wipe, I think in the end I'm happy with where it falls. This is now tied at the number 9 with Die Hard. It is worse than Big Lebowski and Aliens. It is better than Ferris Bueller's Day Off and Beetlejuice. And only when I say better, only we're talking less than 0.2 of a wipe.
I mean, that feels right.
Mm-hmm.
It feels right.
I don't have a problem with it.
The system works.
Yeah.
Well, now's the time of the podcast where we tell you what movie category we're going to be doing next. If you want to spoil it for yourself, just wait till the end of the podcast and listen to the trailer. That'll be the next movie we are covering. Big D, what is that category?
So the next category was the best of Matt Damon. And the contestants were The Talented Mr. Ripley, Dogma, The Rainmaker, Saving Private Ryan, Good Will Hunting, and School Ties. We had over 2,100 votes. This was hotly contested. A lot of good movies, and I'm excited to review the movie that won. So tune in to the end of the podcast to hear the trailer for the Matt Damon movie we'll be doing next week.
Yeah, I'm really disappointed it's not the movie. I really wanted to win because you could have listened to Roger Roper talk about Catholicism for 65 minutes.
Okay, hint, it's not Talented Mr. Ripley.
Right. That concludes this week's podcast of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're everywhere, including Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram. Just follow @Shat the Movies. You can also find us on Facebook. Just search for Shat the Movies Podcast. Our website, where you can vote on upcoming films weeks in advance, is shatthemovies.com. Our email address is hosts@shatthemovies.com, where you can recommend upcoming movie categories. We're everywhere fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, YouTube. If you subscribe and stop by iTunes, please be sure to leave a 5-star review. That really does help the podcast grow and helps us keep our mental sanity when we get that 5-star review. You can also check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review television series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, and Game of Thrones. Coming back April 2019. You can also check out all the information and past podcasts on shatontv.com.
Also, Game of Thrones fans, if you haven't been paying attention, Fire and Blood was released Thanksgiving week. So if you're looking for something to read over the holidays, go pick it up. And you can actually, if you order it online, get, I think, 40 or 50% off the book.
But it's a prequel. It doesn't finish the story.
Yeah.
It's not. Okay. All right. Well, fucking finish the books.
It's Fire and Blood is like 300 years before.
All right. It's about the Targaryens, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, check it out. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D, Dick Eber, and Gene Ned Ryerson Lyons, I'm Roger Roper. Be sure to join us next week for the following review of this movie. Thank you so much for listening. Take care. Good night and good luck.
On the campus of one of America's leading universities.
There is a problem on the main hallway chalkboard. It took my colleagues and I more than 2 years to prove it. And I'm hoping that one of you might prove it by the end of the semester.
The most gifted mind to ever enter its classrooms.
This is correct. Who did this?
Is the person who cleans its floors.
I just need the name of this guy who works in my building.
Got this job through his PO, you can call him.
P.O.?
Parole officer.
Meet Will Hunting.
I've been looking over this rap sheet of yours. Assault, theft, resisting.
I've spoken to the judge, and he's agreed to release you under my supervision. Really? But you have to meet with a therapist every week.
That's pretty good.
For the first time in his life, he's about to meet his match.
How many shrinks you go to before me?
5. This boy's genius is unparalleled. I need someone who can get through to him.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm pumped. Let's let the healing begin. I went on a date last week. Going out again? I don't know. This girl's like, beautiful. She's smart. She's fun. She's like perfect right now. I don't want to ruin that.
Maybe you're perfect right now. Maybe you don't want to ruin that.
Have you talked to him at all about his future?
Give him time to figure out what he wants.
This boy has that gift. Can you imagine if Einstein would have given that up just to get drunk with his buddies every night?
Some people can never believe in themselves.
I can't learn anything from you unless you want to talk about you.
Until someone believes in them.
You can do anything you want. You are bound by nothing.
And you're sitting on a winning lottery ticket. I'd do anything to have what you got.
And some never know how much they can have.
I love you.
Until they discover how much they can give. Academy Award winner Robin Williams, Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Stellan Skarsgård, and Minnie Driver. Good Will Hunting, nominated for 9 Academy Awards.